Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about attacks, specifically the movement to contact. It's a very valuable topic to understand to kind of help contextualize the bigger picture behind battle drills like the classic squad attack. When it comes to discussing tactics in the attack, I think most people tend to focus their discussion around the firefight, how to fire, how to maneuver in order to create a decisive engagement. But I think that creates this big blank space regarding what happens before you get to the firefight. And for many people, this blank space is filled by the simplicity of just sprinting forward until you stumble onto the enemy, and that might work at the individual or fireteam scale, but when you have entire multi-squad platoon-sized offensives initiating in this manner, all it does is create a mass Shift W attack in a Conga line of death. It's an ineffective way to conduct an offensive that basically surrenders every advantage possible to the enemy defense, causing your side to lose way too many lives for way too little gain. So today I'm going to be discussing the big picture behind attacks and laying out for you the anatomy of a movement to contact. What is it? What does it look like? And how can we translate it to video games like Squad? So guys, if you find this video insightful or entertaining, please like and subscribe. If there's anything you disagree with or want to add to, please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, because obviously the biggest goal of mine is to start discussions. Okay, so this is how I'd say 99% of attacks that I see in Squad usually play out. Say we're in Yehorivka here, and we need to attack Sokolov. Usually a bunch of people will spawn and then start moving towards Sokolov. They would just sprint in a straight line in a formless, unorganized mass, and the people conducting this attack know where the objective is, but they very rarely have good information on the composition and disposition of the defending enemy force. And in this sort of scenario, they'll stumble across the enemy, and then this entire force gets sucked into the first fight that breaks out and becomes embroiled in it. As people die, they will continue to respawn on the hatback here and trickle in to keep feeding the attack, but the attacker's tactical options now are limited because nobody can really effectively maneuver outside of this fight. Now, ones and twos can break off to try and go for a flank, but it's too late at this stage for a cohesive squad to conduct an effective flank because everyone is scattered and intermixed inside this fight. One SL might be able to get one or two guys to move with him to set a rally or something on the flank here, but even after he does that, his squad will typically respawn piecemeal instead of as a cohesive unit, and this whole process would be happening too slowly after the initial fight began to really give this entire attack the best chance of success to take Sokolov. So what I want to do today is take the position that maybe we can introduce a little bit more tactical nuance to this whole thing, specifically to how the attacks are initiated by using the movement to contact. In theory, a movement to contact is very simple, especially this simplified version that I'll be presenting here in this video. But in the words of Karl von Clausewitz, everything is very simple in war, but the simplest thing is difficult. And that's no less true when it comes to teamwork and coordination in this game. So I'm about to lay out the anatomy of how to do the movement to contact here, but as many of you will know, the main challenge for this stuff usually lies in the execution, which requires good squad leaders and disciplined players to properly do. So I recognize that it's not always possible in Squad to have these things, but I will still focus in this video on laying out the blueprint so that the knowledge is out there as a common framework for players to reference and use, not just in Squad, but I think it can be used in other games as well. When we want to conduct a movement to contact, the first thing to do is divide our forces into two components, the main body and the advanced guard. Okay, what do those do? So the main body is self-explanatory. It's intended to do the bulk of the fighting, the killing, and the winning. It's the main body. The thing about most teams in video games like Squad is that most teams only have a main body that gets blindly smashed into the enemy. This creates an immediate, decisive engagement with no room for adjustment once the situation has developed. So the magic happens with the second body of troops you want to create, the advanced guard. What does the advanced guard do? Now, in the context of the movement to contact, it can be described as having two primary roles, force protection and reconnaissance. So first, let's talk about force protection. The advanced guard's first role is to protect your main body from being decisively engaged, to preserve its combat power so that it can be used in the time and place of your choosing. So when I'm walking forward, I don't want my main attacking force to become discovered and engaged and fixed in place by the enemy defenses, and then I'm left unable to maneuver or conduct an assault. So the advanced guard acts as a shield deployed forward of the main body so that they take first contact, leaving the main body able to maneuver to positions of advantage and launch decisive assaults. The second role of the advanced guard is reconnaissance. This is more straightforward. The entire point of a movement to contact is to find out where the enemy is as you're conducting and developing the attack. So all efforts of the advanced guard should be focused on finding where the enemy defenses are by getting into a fight with them, after which the main body can then act on that information. The advanced guard isn't conducting the sneaky type of reconnaissance that you might think of, where you're avoiding a fight. It's more of a big reconnaissance in force. All right, so here's what this whole thing would look like in practice. Say we have this fob here, the attack fob with the radio and the hab here. This is Sokolov, the point that we want to attack. And say we have 3 full infantry squads spawn out of this hab here. And this whole attack force will start rolling in towards Sokolov with squad 1 as the advanced guard and squads 2 and 3 trailing as the main body. I have them arranged in the column formation simply because that's the most natural and common formation that people take. But if we're going to be a little bit more intentional about things, they could, for example, arrange themselves in a wedge formation, which would allow them to better and more rapidly react to any contact. And similarly, squad 1 and the lead here will typically find itself arranged into a column formation with the 2 fire teams trailing one after another. Now, as squad 1 attacks, they may initially take some scattered infantry contact, 1 or 2 enemies, which would be no big deal. They would just be able to quickly dispatch these guys and continue on with the attack. Eventually, however, this lead squad is going to encounter a group of enemies large enough that these guys can't just push through alone. And this is when you'll know that you've reached the main defense. And the key thing for this squad here at this stage is to stop advancing. This element should not continue to bullheadedly push on and try and finish this job alone. That's just a glorified way for this entire attack to just devolve into a piecemeal attack where each of these squads is fed into the enemy defense one by one. Even if these other squads decide, hey, we're going to try and conduct some flanking attacks, if squad 1 doesn't hold up to wait for these guys, it'll still be a piecemeal attack because these guys will push and die first, and these guys will then be hitting the point alone without the support of this first squad. So what should happen instead is for this lead squad, squad 1, to bring the entire squad online to get everyone into the fight and start engaging the enemy. Their focus will be on establishing a base of fire to draw the enemy into this firefight, which will fix them into place with all their attention looking one way, which in turn gives the attacking force more information on the defenders, or at least be able to better predict their composition and disposition. So the goal of these guys is just to dig in, hold position, and last as long as they can. This is called developing the situation. And this is where the teamwork aspect of tactics come in, because these guys, instead of trying to do everything by themselves, are now going to place their trust in the rest of the team to conduct the decisive action and the winning. Now, squads 2 and 3 back here in the main body, because they're uncommitted to the attack as of yet, they are free to maneuver and are not stuck inside of this meat grinder. If we end up in a situation where squad 1 in the lead, there are just too many enemies for them to deal with alone, we could push up squad 2, for example, to assist in the establishment of the base of fire. And then squad 3 can maneuver to the flank, where they will drop a rally. All of these squads should be dropping their rallies, by the way. However, if squad 1 up in front is doing just fine, then both squads 2 and 3 can maneuver together to the flank. And here they can set up for the main thrust of the attack to conduct an assault on Sokolov and hopefully win. Now, this would be a platoon-sized hasty attack because it's executed with minimal preparation to try and maintain the momentum of the initiation of the attack here. It's very important that squads 2 and 3 need to be very quick with their movement to the flank and the launching of the actual assault to ensure that squad 1 is not left high and dry to die alone against all of these enemy defenders that will be focusing on them. So rapid and decisive action on the part of the rest of the team is very important here. And basically, as long as the main body does their job properly, the net effect is that the initiation of this attack will be much more effective than if everybody had simply just walked forward from the Hab in a single big mass, because now the attacking force as a whole has more information on the enemy. Ideally, they have a positional advantage as well, and they will be synchronizing their efforts to coordinate their push instead of trickling in piecemeal. Now, quick note, because this is squad, this sort of an attack will rarely be a one life attack that's successful in one go. Respawns will still typically be part of the fight that results from the movement to contact as a means to sustain the offensive. Squads will have their rallies, the team itself will have their attack fob, and the situation will constantly shift as the defenders react to the attack, even try to counterattack, and the attacking force obviously might try to adjust accordingly. So post-movement to contact, the offensive will change from the structured approach that I have just laid out here to a much more fluid operation where squad leaders are coordinating with each other on the fly. But note that there is a big difference here between respawns being used by squads acting as cohesive elements, staying together and spawning together, and synchronizing their moves with each other, versus just a big mass of troops that rolls in without much internal organization and simply being fed a constant trickle of ones and twos respawning off the Hab. Okay, you might think, so instead of having everyone spawn off the same Hab, why don't we have multiple squads set up a multi-pronged offensive from different flanks? Each different squad can maneuver to a different angle around the objective, and once everyone's in position, we can launch this great multi-pronged attack that'll be way more effective than whatever this is. This sort of pre-planned, coordinated type of offensive is more on the side of what's called a deliberate attack. Attacks exist on a spectrum, with deliberate attacks, which require a lot of planning and a lot of time to prepare on one end, and hasty attacks, which are conducted with very little planning but are very quick to action on the other side. It's not a binary between these two. Everything is usually somewhere in between these two extremes to varying degrees. When people in Milsim think of a coordinated attack, I think most default to the deliberate attack side of the spectrum as the ideal to strive for, and I think this is a mistake. To be clear, deliberate attacks have their utility. Today, however, I want to highlight two major drawbacks of deliberate attacks. First, for them to work, they really rely on lots of good information on the enemy. If you don't know whether there are defenders or where they are, your plans are more than likely to become derailed by unforeseen circumstances. Now, it is true that generally, no plan survives contact with the enemy, but it's one thing to have to adapt and tweak your plan because something new came up, and it's another for your plan to become useless because you had based it on too many assumptions. Deliberate attacks are not based on assumptions. They rely on prior reconnaissance to succeed, and that is not a very realistic proposition in a game like Squad, which is pretty fast-paced as far as Milsim goes, even if it's very slow compared to other FPSs. By the time you've gathered all your information and finished your planning, all of that intelligence will be outdated. The other drawback of deliberate attacks is that they take time to set up. So by the time you've got Squad 1 in position and Squad 2 in position and Squad 3 is ready to go, the situation will have changed and the enemy defenders might have even compromised one of your squads, or maybe the strategic bigger picture on the map will have changed enough to make your entire attack pointless. So in a game like Squad, it's vital to maintain tempo. It's not enough to be coordinated, knowing where to go. You need to have timing, speed, and consistency. Tempo isn't just being fast to get things done quickly, but rather maintaining steady, continuous pressure on the enemy without any letup. As far as Squad is concerned, though, that just means that you need to be fast in order to do that. I think most video game players instinctively understand this, which is why you get situations where a team will launch an attack by rushing straight from the Hab to the objective in a straight line. If you're cynical, you can say that it's because they're stupid. But if you're a little bit more charitable, you can say it's because they feel the overwhelming urge to maintain tempo and get on the objective. The problem is that in doing so, they are now swinging the pendulum to the other extreme, wherein the offensive is now becoming so rushed and unstructured that it's just a conga line of death fed piecemeal to the enemy's defense. And this is where, in my opinion, the movement to contact comes in as a structured way of maintaining tempo by initiating hasty attacks. It's for those situations where you have a lot of uncertainty about the enemy's defenses, but you still need to just get in there without stopping everything to conduct reconnaissance and set up all your pieces for the perfect deliberate attack. At the same time, though, a properly conducted movement attack structures things in a way to commit to a decisive action at a time and place of your choosing without simply getting embroiled in the first fight that breaks out. So when you boil it down, guys, movement to contact is really simple and easy. The tactical firefight side of things is literally just flank, bro, but at a bigger scale than most FPS players are accustomed to thinking about. You really need to stay together and maneuver as cohesive squads to have an impact. Before the fight starts, it's just setting up your forces to address the situation in the best way when shit hits the fan, using a vanguard and a main body. The two work together like a person moving around in the dark with an outstretched hand to feel for their adversary. That's the advance guard. And once you feel him, you use your other hand, the main body, to punch him in the face. That's the movement to contact. And then after that first punch lands, the firefight properly begins, with the two opponents trading punches using their two hands in tandem according to the situation. So that's the ensuing firefight and the adaptation and counter-adaptation that ensues. Now, I want to emphasize that everything here is for you to apply to situations in-game pragmatically. There's a tendency among gamers to think of military tactics as pre-baked solutions that you can just throw at situations like their Pokemon attacks. Oh, you know, squads 1, 2, and 3 used movement to contact against Solikov. It's highly effective. Actual practice in real life, as much as in video games, doesn't really work that way. Knowing what to do and how to do it is extremely easy compared to actually doing it. And even then, every move you make has a counter that can be used by the enemy, causing it to fail. So in order to succeed, you need to learn to use these principles in a flexible manner and think outside the box. The purpose of this video was to provide a baseline of knowledge for understanding the fundamentals and the doctrine, maybe as a guide for group training. But when you're playing in game, please be creative and adaptable. There's this great mantra that you can use when you're freeballing situations but still want some sort of formula to follow, and that is find, fix, finish. Almost all offensive infantry tactics can be boiled down to these 3 steps. Have someone find the bad guys, then have someone fix the bad guys into place, finally have someone else finish the bad guys off with a decisive attack. So guys, if you found this video enjoyable or insightful, please give it a like. If there were things that you disagreed with or you have extra thoughts to contribute, please comment down below, as a big goal of mine is to start discussions. Otherwise, show your support by hitting that subscribe button. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks for watching.